Back when my original channel was active, one of the first videos I ever got a strike on was my video comparing Aho Girl and Baka and Test, and why I much preferred the comedy of the latter over the former. With my new channel well underway, I debated on whether I should re-upload that video along with the rest of my content. Ultimately, I decided not to because I didn't really think it was that good a video anyway. The points I made weren't technically wrong, but they didn't really get to the heart of why I hated Aho Girl, and it took Asobi Asobase to get me to understand the truth behind the matter. Before we get into why, however, we first have to ask an extremely broad and kinda stupid question: what exactly is comedy? It could be as wide-reaching as something that makes you laugh, or as abstract as tragedy plus time, or as technical as a series of spoken lines or performed actions made up of setups and punchlines intended to produce laughter in its intended audience. And these are all valid ways of interpreting comedy. All art is subjective, but I find comedy to be perceived as one of the most subjective, if that's even a thing. What makes one person laugh could make another person cringe and another person offended, and another person still will be totally unaffected. So this video doesn't exist to prove one type of comedy as being better than another. I'm just here to talk about why I don't find these shows funny as opposed to others in the same genre. I feel like I shouldn't have to keep explaining this, but for some reason there are still people out there who understand art as being inherently subjective about as well as ShowPro understands fair use. Now you see that? That was a joke. Albeit a rather depressing one for me personally, but a joke nonetheless. I've realized that this script is slowly turning into me explaining what comedy is, and I feel like that's a bad choice for everyone involved here, so I just want to isolate one major element that I find crucial to executing certain types of humor, and hopefully not drift too far away from that, because otherwise this is going to get really complicated really fast. There are a lot of different ways to write humor, and humor has evolved and spread into countless different mediums over the course of human existence, to the point where there really isn't even a common thread between all of them. There is no humor unifier, which is why it's all the more important to understand what kind of humor should be used in a given context. If, for example, you're creating a joke as a one-off self-contained instance of humor, then all that matters is that the setup and punchline work well together given the context relevant to the subject matter. However, when we enter the realm of long-form, continuous, and serialized humor, it needs something a little more personal. Whether it's a 24-minute episode of cute anime girls joking around with each other, or a 90-minute stand-up routine, the best types of comedies are the ones that can get us to empathize with the people delivering the humor. I'm not saying I need their entire life story, I just need something that I can latch onto. Pretty much anything will do. Traffic stories.
He says, suck a bag of dicks!
Family dinners.
A man can't work 12 hours and come home to a wing?
Literally anything that feels like this is a real person telling a joke. Now, again, that isn't 100% necessary all the time. Absurdism still exists, but if you're going to make a straightforward comedy, then it should probably be grounded in at least some semblance of the familiar. Even Pop Team Epic has a vague understanding of realism and character construction so that it can actually execute its absurdism properly. And this is what really irks me about Aho Girl, Asobi Asobase, and other shows like them. The absolute entirety of the dialogue is built solely around setting up the joke, and almost none of it is devoted to getting us to empathize with these characters. They are literal meme machines, and that would be fine if this were just some image macro you scrolled past on Twitter, but this is a full episode of TV programming, and you're gonna need something a little meatier than meme humor to fill a half-hour time slot. Serialized comedy is funny because as the story progresses, we spend more time with the characters involved, and as a result, we can understand how they feel and why they go about humor in the certain ways that they do. But if we can't understand or empathize with the internal logic of the characters and how it makes them distinct from the people around them, then it's pointless. Yoshiko is a massive fucking idiot, and that is the entirety of her character. There's nothing to empathize with because she is just a meme. Hanako and Olivia are dumb high school girls, and that is the entirety of their character. There is nothing to empathize with because they are just a meme. This is actually why I was extremely disappointed with Kasumi's characterization, because the show literally starts with her backstory displaying a fundamental element of her character, and then does absolutely nothing with it after the first 5 or 10 minutes because she's surrounded by soulless shitpost bots and can't effectively interact with them in a natural way. Does she have better characterization later on? Fuck if I know, but I couldn't care less about finding out because the bulk of the comedy is so ungrounded and apathetic. Now, in Aho Girl, a lot of this disconnect results from Yoshiko not having any internal dialogue. Not that it would have helped much, but having internal dialogue is a huge benefit to a comedy series because it literally explains what a character is trying to achieve, and thus how they fail at doing so. With that absent from Yoshiko's character, all we're left with is a raving lunatic completely divorced from reality. This kind of character could work in theory, but it should be used sparingly instead of in every single second of the show. Asobi Asobase has a different problem entirely. The internal dialogues are definitely there, just as much as they are in any other comedy series, but remember how I said earlier that it's important to understand the internal logic of each character to see how they are distinct from each other? That's where Asobi fucks up, because they are basically all the same character. Slightly different mannerisms and appearances, but the same internal logic. At first, you might think that this would help the comedy because they'd be on the same wavelength, but traditional comedy sketches are built on a clashing of ideas rather than a meshing of them. This is why the straight man routine is so ubiquitous in comedy. To pull from Emplemon's SpongeBob video, the reason that early episodes of SpongeBob are so memorable is because of the comedic clashes between SpongeBob and Squidward and how these two characters are foils to each other. The vast majority of people's favorite episodes are those that revolve around these two characters because they are so diametrically opposed to each other in worldview that the jokes practically write themselves. It's not about throwing a bunch of crazy people into a room and seeing what happens, it's about taking people with basic yet diverse personality templates and seeing how they interact with each other naturally. This is why I call stuff like Asobi Asobase an apathetic comedy. The joke exists solely for the sake of a joke existing, not to create a comedic character to latch onto or to present an idea for the characters to react to in different ways. It exists solely for itself because the joke needs to exist for people to laugh, even though it doesn't understand that humor is primarily emotion driven and we can't experience a proper emotional tie-in to the joke without giving us something to empathize with. It's not even about having characters that are stupid. Having stupid characters who say stupid things has been a cornerstone of comedy for years.
I'm a Star Wars!
But it's only through understanding that character that we understand the humor. Ralph Wiggum isn't just an idiot. He's an idiot who's also extremely socially awkward and hasn't had much interaction with other kids because they don't like him that much, thus further perpetuating his lack of social understanding. Even some of the not-so-great comedies from this year understand this concept better. Take Joshin Dropkick, for example. Every character in the show has a different personality and, as a result, a different style of humor, so the cast immediately has strong chemistry even though the story starts in medias res. We can also immediately identify what everyone's angle is and why they are acting the way that they are. Joshin is a demon summoned to the human world against her will by Yurine, and so Joshin is trying to brutally murder her. Yurine is a soft-spoken yet extremely sadistic witch who takes pleasure in punishing Joshin for her antics. There's a fallen angel in there who looks like a fucking abuse victim when she's constantly surrounded by these unholy demons, and hilarity ensues. There's a really strong setup here for solid comedic interactions. It's just a shame that they could only come up with 2 jokes that they repeat over and over again. I want to stress again that this has nothing to do with the intensity or absurdity of the humor itself. It is very possible to write jokes that are just as immature or outlandish or random and still have them be funny. Gintama exists. Pop Team Epic exists. Flork of Cows exists. There are a lot of different comedy series out there and a lot of them are really good. But Aho Girl and Asobi Asobase just aren't because of their apathetic approach to writing comedy. So hopefully I can find some other shows from this year to give me enough laughs to make up for all the trash. Well, that's about it for our mini exploration of the comedy genre. Tomorrow we'll be diving into a much more contentious genre with an even more contentious show, so stay tuned for more. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rourketon Join, Christine Seibert, Tim Johnson, Call Me Catlord, Diane Wierzbicki, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.